We got, oh, it's been a 2 to 3 north mostly, occasionally a 4. You got a fish stream clear across the bottom, and you might scope out these side channels to see if they have any water. And then from here, you're going to go back to Mark and Chuck at the, I think we called it Upper Brush Creek or something like that. And you got 51 acres, 510 gallons. We're at Gellatly Elk Reserve. It's a 51 acre clear cut. It was just planted a couple months ago. We're at the first part of April, getting ready to aerial treat this with atrazine, transline to kill the thistle, the Canadian and the bull thistle, and hardball 2,4-D to kill some of the broadleaves like the senecio and the galium that's out here. The atrazine will wear down the seed bank a little bit more, particularly on the senecio. This was treated last fall with 1 gallon of glyphosate to the acre and 4 ounces of Aus Extra, and that was to take out the woody component, the hazel, the ocean spray, as well as take out the bracken fern and sword fern. The thinking is to get as much of the woody component taken out before we plant the trees, and then this is a release, the work we're doing here today, to take out the herbaceous community, and so the trees have an opportunity to capture soil moisture and nutrients in the late summer months when there's a lot more moisture stress. And this not only gives us additional growth, but increases survival in our young plantations. This is planted to Douglas fir, grand fir, and western red cedar, all containerized seedlings. And our goal is to have this unit free to grow, and the tree's about 4 feet tall by the time the end of the 3rd growing season.
Up that little side draw, half booming.
Yeah, he's going to half boom the fish stream here. He's staying 60 feet off, and the upper half of the boom is on, and the tail and prop wash push the spray or the chemical uphill, so the fines don't get within 60 feet of the creek at all. The droplets, it's a D8 nozzle, so we get a nice big droplet, and their nozzles are angled back to cut down the shear or the shearing of the droplets, so they come down pretty quick. They're not broken into smaller particles, they stay large, come right down, and it minimizes drift. You also have about a 3 to 4 mile north wind, which is also pushing the droplets down fairly quickly, so they're not hanging in the air at all. Doug likes to buffer all the cricks first before he treats the rest of the unit. And he has an onboard computer that tracks into all the satellites, well, 3 to 5 satellites, and puts each path. He has a kind of like an etch-to-sketch screen there that keeps track of every pass. Satellite helps him do that. Then he has a crop hawk that keeps track of his gallons per acre and his speed. So we're getting a 10 gallon per acre rate. And with the satellites locking them on to each pass, he's dead on as far as coverage and rate per acre. Virtually none of our clear cuts have skips anymore. And then when he runs out of mix on this load, the satellites will line them back up and set them right up to where we left off. Also, Greg Wyatt from our office put together a set of shape files for the whole project, so that every one of these units, the perimeter's been walked or hiked and then plotted, and then that's downloaded back at our office into the GIS system, Geographic Information System, and Greg pulls those shape files, the polygons of each unit up, and that's emailed up to the helicopter company, and they download it into the helicopter. So every unit that we treat has a shape or a polygon to it, and it really makes it nice for the pilot to have that, and the accuracy is within usually a foot or more, or better than a foot or more as far as the outside edge of the unit. Doug Beath is our pilot today. He's been flying for around 35 years. Western Helicopter is the operator. Doug works for Western Helicopter. Doug's been with Western for about 35 years. The truck driver today is Joe. He's aspiring to be a helicopter pilot. He's already trained and licensed. He just needs to get more hours before he can start doing application work. But he'll train some more this spring with Doug Beath and John Mateski, their chief pilot. But he's driving truck just to understand how this all works out here from an operations standpoint. Doug makes it look easy. He's one of the best pilots there is. Done thousands and thousands of acres of area application in forestry. Other thing I like about Western Helicopter, and most operators are this way, but they're real safe operators. They take very good care of their equipment and machinery, have an excellent mechanical staff. Just really enjoy working with this high level of professionalism they have out here on our projects. It's the 8th of July, and we're reviewing and evaluating the work that Doug Beath, our pilot from Western Helicopter, did this spring. Did the herbaceous weed control, and he left a nice buffer along the riparian area there, and we have a really good contrast between where we had vegetation control on the herbaceous community and the untreated that Doug left. A nice riparian buffer to protect the stream. It's the middle of November 2013. We're at the Gellatly Elk Reserve unit, and we're just finishing up 3 growing seasons. The trees are 3 years old in the plantation. They were 1 year old from seed when they were planted. Most of the trees are at least a minimum height of 4 feet out here, but there are some that are well over 9 to 10 feet tall out here. This particular Douglas fir grew at least 3 foot, 3.5 foot this year, and it did that the previous year in between these whorls of branches. The growth out here is pretty spectacular. Our vegetation management strategies have been most successful. Our site preparation was also proved to give us a fair amount of success. The survival out here, the surveys demonstrated that we had 98% plus survival. There's still a lot of forage out here for the deer and elk. The elk and deer are both present out here. We can tell that by the droppings. The vegetation out here is occupying the site such that we don't have to worry about soil erosion. And the deer browse is starting to mitigate just as the trees grow above the height of where deer and elk can browse the seedlings. So we're, for the most part, done managing vegetation on this site. Our next silviculture operation will be a commercial thinning in about 20 years, when we'll take out half the stems. This was planted at 430 stems to the acre. We'll leave a crop of around 200 of the best growing trees after we finish with our commercial thinning in 20 years. So we're really excited about how this plantation turned out and look forward to the high quality wood we believe this site will produce. We're at Gellatly Elk Reserve, June 13th, 2014. Just the early part of the summer. We're seeing nice vigorous growth not only in the trees this year, but also a lot of forage. There's some elk and deer browse throughout the unit. We have some elderberry knee-high that's being browsed probably by the elk. There's fresh elk droppings all around me, and there's deer trails out here too. In fact, I chased some out of here when I drove in about 20 minutes ago into this unit. There's a fair amount of songbird activity that I'm sure you're picking up on the mic. They're cruising through this plantation right now, the different songbirds probably picking off the insects, and they like to venture back and forth between the older timber adjacent to us and the clear cut itself where there's a lot of bugs. But the birds are flying everywhere out here currently. This is some knee-high elderberry that's probably been browsed in the last 24 hours, pretty freshly clipped. The elk really like elderberry this time of year. And there's some fresh tracks, looks like deer tracks I'm following all through here. Fair amount of false dandelion out in this unit. We see that a lot in these plantations, along with the elderberry, a little bit of bracken fern, and the various grasses. This dandelion, the fresh flowers have been clipped off and browsed real aggressively here in this patch. Again, probably both by deer and elk, and even some of the thistle, the Canadian thistle, the tops have been browsed off, and I think that's something the elk like to eat. So a fair amount of forage in here in this plantation. As far as vegetation management in this unit, and in fact any silviculture activity, we're mostly done. Unless we get a surprise here in the next couple of years, I don't think we need to make any further silviculture investment or activity out here. Things are looking really well, and we're carrying about 430 stems to the acre. And as I said previously, we'll probably hold off doing anything else for the next 20 years when we come in and do our first commercial thinning out here about age 22 to age 24.